7 vegetables you still have time to plant in August. And that tired, half-empty garden you were ready to abandon? It could still feed you right into winter. Most people look at their garden in August and believe the season is ending. The tomato vines are slowing down. The cucumbers are turning brown. Empty spaces appear where summer crops once stood. So they stop planting. Then they walk into the grocery store with a short list. Some lettuce, a bag of carrots, a bunch of radishes, maybe a little spinach. Nothing fancy. But when the cashier says the total, they stare at those plastic bags and wonder how a few vegetables became so expensive. Then they go home, walk past perfectly good soil, and wait until spring while someone else grows their food hundreds of miles away. That is not your fault. Most of us were taught to think of gardening as a short summer activity. Plant in spring, harvest in July, quit in August. But the old gardeners knew better. They saw August as a second beginning. Cooler nights were coming. Insects would soon begin to disappear. Empty soil could be planted again. And some vegetables would become even sweeter as the temperature dropped. My name is Ron. Johanna and I have lived off-grid for more than 40 years. During that time, we have never paid an electric bill. But living this way taught us something even more valuable. A garden does not follow the same calendar hanging on your kitchen wall. It follows the soil, the daylight, and the first frost. Today, I will show you 7 vegetables you can still plant in August and the simple calculation that tells you whether they have enough time to mature where you live. The first vegetable is the fastest one on this list: radishes. Some varieties can go from seed to harvest in about 25 to 30 days. Plant them in August, and you may be eating them before your neighbors have put away their summer lawn furniture. But do not make the mistake most new gardeners make. They open the packet and pour every seed into one long row. A few days later, hundreds of seedlings emerge so close together that none of the roots have room to grow. Instead, plant one short row. Wait 7 to 10 days. Then plant another. Repeat that once more. This is called succession planting. It gives you several smaller harvests instead of 50 radishes arriving on the same Tuesday morning. Plant the seeds about ½ an inch deep and keep the soil consistently moist while they germinate. That last part matters in August. The surface may look damp in the morning and become dry enough to crack by late afternoon. Johanna uses an old trick to prevent that. After planting, she places a thin board over the row. It shades the soil and keeps the moisture from disappearing. Every morning, she lifts the board and looks underneath. As soon as the first pale green sprouts appear, she removes it. Do not leave the board over growing seedlings. It is only there during germination. A few seeds, a little shade. A month later, food. But radishes are not the vegetable most people struggle to grow in August. That would be number 2, leaf lettuce. Not the large, tightly packed heads that need weeks of ideal weather. Loose leaf lettuce. You can harvest the outside leaves while leaving the center to continue growing. One small patch may give you several bowls of salad instead of one harvest. The challenge is not growing lettuce. It is convincing lettuce seed to germinate in hot soil. Many gardeners plant it in full afternoon sun, water it once, and see nothing. They blame the seed. But the seed was not bad. It was simply too hot. Choose a location with morning sun and afternoon shade. If you do not have one, create temporary shade using light fabric, an old wooden crate, or shade cloth suspended above the bed. You want shade with plenty of moving air. Plant the seeds shallowly. Barely cover them with fine soil. Then keep the surface moist. If the heat is still brutal where you live, start the seeds in small containers on a shaded porch. Move the seedlings into the garden when the temperature begins to fall. One August, Johanna planted lettuce behind our old woodshed. I told her it would never receive enough sunlight. She smiled and said, "Not enough summer sun, maybe, but just enough August sun." 3 weeks later, we were cutting tender leaves from her plants. The lettuce I had planted in full sun had barely survived. That was the last time I argued with Johanna about lettuce. Now, lettuce needs protection from August heat. But the third vegetable gives you the opposite problem. You need to know when to wait. That vegetable is spinach. Spinach can be stubborn when the soil is hot. If the ground still feels warm after sunset, wait until later in August. Gardeners in warmer southern areas may need to wait even longer. But do not forget about it. Spinach planted as summer fades can become one of the sweetest crops in your fall garden. Cold changes its flavor. After exposure to cool weather, the leaves often become milder and sweeter than spinach grown in spring warmth. Plant the seeds about ½ an inch deep and keep the soil evenly moist. A thin layer of fine compost helps prevent the surface from forming a hard crust. Once the plants are established, place chopped leaves or clean straw around them. Use just enough to protect the soil and keep the roots cool. If winter arrives early, a simple frost cloth or low tunnel can extend the harvest. Spinach is tougher than it looks. I have stepped outside on a freezing morning and found the leaves stiff against the ground. They looked finished, but I did not pull them. I left them alone. By afternoon, the sun had warmed the plants. The leaves lifted, and the entire row looked alive again. That is an old lesson worth remembering. A plant can look defeated without being dead. Give it time, and if you think spinach is stubborn, vegetable number 4 survives conditions that would finish most salad crops. Kale. Radishes are the sprinters of the August garden. Kale is the old workhorse. It tolerates cold, produces for weeks, and does not require a large garden. A few healthy plants can provide more leaves than many families expect. You can sow kale directly in August. But if your first frost arrives early, buy young transplants. That head start may make the difference between tiny plants and a real harvest. Place them where they will receive at least 6 hours of sunlight. Water deeply after planting, then protect the roots with a light layer of mulch. The real secret is inspecting the undersides of the leaves. Caterpillars can damage kale quickly, and the first thing you may notice is a scattering of tiny holes. Turn the leaf over. Look near the central stem. Check again the next morning. The old gardeners did not need complicated pest monitoring systems. They carried a cup of coffee and walked through the garden every morning. They looked beneath the leaves. They touched the soil. They noticed what had changed. That 5-minute habit can save an entire bed. Harvest the lower kale leaves first and leave the center, growing point, untouched. Small leaves are tender enough for salads. Larger leaves are better in soups and stews. And later, I'll tell you exactly where you can still find free land in this country. First, there is another old-fashioned vegetable that gives you 2 foods from one small patch of soil. Number 5 is the beet. Most people think only about the round root, but the leaves are edible too. Harvest a few young greens while the root continues developing. Just never remove every leaf because the plant needs them to produce energy. Beet seeds are unusual. Each rough little piece you plant may contain more than one seed. That is why several seedlings sometimes emerge together. When they grow a few inches tall, thin them carefully. And do not throw those little plants away. Wash them and add them to a salad. Your thinning becomes your first harvest. Beets need loose soil and steady moisture. Break apart hard clods before planting and remove any large stones that could interfere with the roots. Then keep the soil damp without flooding it. A long dry period followed by heavy watering can produce tough, uneven roots. Consistency matters more than complexity. Johanna and I have seen one inexpensive packet of seeds provide tender greens first, full roots later, and enough extra food to preserve for the colder months. Multiply that by several crops and several seasons, and you begin to understand how these forgotten methods can reduce your grocery bill. It is not about growing everything overnight. It is about making every small patch of soil work for you. And that brings me to something important. All right, let me stop right here for a second. Because what I just showed you, that's maybe 5% of everything Johanna and I figured out in 40 years on this land. We took every single project, well over 100 of them, and put it all in one place. Water that never runs dry, power that costs you pennies, a greenhouse that feeds you 12 months a year, even buried in snow. We called it the self-sufficient backyard. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Ron, I don't have the land for that. You don't need much. A little over 1,000 square feet, a person does the job. I don't have the money. Neither did we. We did this on almost nothing. I don't have the skills. Well, let me tell you something. I was a city kid, born and raised in Philadelphia. Never grew so much as a tomato before Johanna dragged me out here. If I could learn it, you can too. Today, and today only, they're letting it go for 70% off. That's $37 instead of $128. And you'll walk away with 3 things for free. A guide to finding free land right here in America, a book of old 1900s DIY survival projects, and a full course on growing fish and vegetables together in an aquaponic garden. And there's no risk on your end. 60 days. If it's not for you, send it back. No questions asked. Full refund. Johanna and I put our name on that. The link's right there in the description. Now, back to the 7 vegetables you can still plant in August. Vegetable number 6 is the carrot. I learned one of my best carrot lessons after Johanna found me preparing a complicated row with fertilizer and half a dozen tools. She looked down at the hard soil and said, "Those seeds don't need more things. They need a way out." She was right. Carrot seeds are tiny. When they germinate, the seedlings are too weak to push through a thick crust of hardened soil. So forget the complicated preparations. Loosen the top few inches of the bed. Remove large stones and break apart hard clods. Make a shallow furrow. Sprinkle the seeds thinly and cover them with no more than 1/4 inch of fine soil or sifted compost. Then keep the surface moist until they emerge. You can place damp burlap or a thin board over the row to slow evaporation, but check underneath it every day. Remove the cover as soon as you see the first green threads. Once the carrots emerge, thin them so each root has room to develop. It may feel wasteful, but crowded carrots become thin, twisted, and stunted. Gardeners with early winters should choose a short, fast-maturing variety. In milder areas, carrots can remain beneath a layer of mulch and be harvested as needed. There are few better feelings than brushing aside cold leaves, pushing your fingers into dark autumn soil, and pulling out a bright orange carrot while the rest of the garden appears asleep. But the final vegetable may be even more useful. It gives you edible leaves and edible root, and a harvest fast enough to rescue an empty August bed. Number 7 is the turnip. Years ago, our bean plants finished earlier than expected. The bed looked exhausted, and I wanted to cover it with straw until spring. Johanna had another idea. She scattered turnip seeds across the soil and gently raked them in. Within weeks, the bare ground had become a thick green patch. We harvested tender young leaves first. Then we pulled the roots. What remained went into soups and the cellar. That supposedly finished bed fed us 3 different ways. Turnips grow quickly and tolerate cool. Weather. Plant the seeds about 1/2 inch deep and keep the soil moist until they emerge. Thin the seedlings before they become crowded. You can cook the greens you remove instead of throwing them away. Harvest the roots while they are still young. Do not leave them in the soil, hoping they will grow as large as softballs. Older turnips can become woody and harsh. Small roots are usually sweeter and more tender. That old bean bed taught me something I have never forgotten. Empty soil produces nothing. Even a late planting gives you a chance. Now you know the 7 vegetables. But there is one final step that determines whether your August garden succeeds or freezes before the harvest. You need to calculate your planting deadline. First, find the average date of the first fall frost where you live. Then check the number of days to maturity printed on the seed packet. Count backward from your frost date and add another week or two, because plants grow more slowly as autumn days become shorter. Suppose your average first frost arrives around October 15th. A radish that matures in 30 days still gives you a comfortable planting window in August. A vegetable requiring 80 days would be riskier unless it tolerates frost. You start with a transplant, or you protect it with a cover. Remember, an average frost date is only a planning tool. The weather does not read calendars. That is why old gardeners prepared for surprises. Keep frost cloth or a few old sheets nearby. Support the material above the plants with simple hoops so it does not press heavily against the leaves. One cold night does not always mean the season is over. A simple cover may give you several additional weeks of food. You also need to respect the August heat. Water the soil before planting. Sow your seeds. Cover them gently. Then water again with a soft spray so the seeds do not wash out of the row. Check the bed every morning during germination. Once the seedlings become established, water more deeply to encourage stronger roots. Add a light layer of mulch, but keep it away from tiny seedlings until they are large enough to rise above it. You do not need to plant all 7 vegetables. Choose 2. Plant 1 short row of radishes and 1 container of lettuce. Or place 3 kale transplants where your cucumber vines used to grow. Start small. Learn what autumn does in your garden. Then write it down. Record the variety, the planting date, the first frost, and what you harvested. That notebook will eventually become more valuable than any general planting calendar. It tells the story of your soil, your weather, your backyard. This is how old knowledge survives. One season at a time, one family at a time, one handwritten page at a time. And you have to wonder, why do the big food corporations, the seed companies, the folks who send you that electric bill every month, why don't they want you knowing any of this? There's a reason people are trying to keep books like this one off the shelves. It's not because it doesn't work, it's because it works too well. So here is my challenge for you. Before this weekend's, find 1 empty place in your garden, 1 raised bed, or 1 container near your door. Plant something in it. Radishes, lettuce, spinach, kale, beets, carrots, or turnips. Do not wait for perfect weather or the perfect garden. Put the seed in the soil. Give it water. Give it time. If this video helped you, leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss the old methods our grandparents understood and the modern world forgot. And tell me in the comments, which of these 7 vegetables are you planting this August? I read every comment. In the next video, I will show you how Johanna and I protect a fall garden from the first hard frost, using materials most people already have around the house. Until then, keep your hands in the soil. Summer may be fading, but your growing season does not have to end with it. You still have time.